I hope this is not nepotism, but we have a husband and wife as speakers in 2 consecutive days, and Father Gregory sternly warned me to make sure they weren't saying exactly the same thing. However, they did both submit slides, and they did not appear to be identical slides, and the content did not appear to be identical, but some degree of overlap and repetition can be useful. I introduce Father Deacon Filip Lommaert from the parish of St. Dunstan, Poole, Bournemouth.
Very Reverend and Reverend Fathers, fellow deacons, brethren and sisters, welcome. In this talk today, I'll be talking about the community in a multicultural Britain and Ireland. And in this talk I will address several topics. Those will be
you have to keep tapping. Audibly.
Okay. First of all, a multicultural Britain and Ireland. What does it actually mean? Our community, who are we? How does our community fit in a multicultural Britain and Ireland? Then possible issues and challenges for our community in a multicultural Britain and Ireland. Then the important question, what can our community do? Followed by the conclusion. First, the multicultural Britain and Ireland, what does it mean? To answer that, we have to have a definition of multiculturalism. Multiculturalism is the view that cultures, races, and ethnic groups, particularly those of minority groups, deserve special acknowledgement of their differences within a dominant political culture. This can take different forms. It can either be recognition of contributions to the cultural life of the political community as a whole, a demand for special protection under the law for certain cultural groups, or autonomous rights of governance for certain cultures. Multiculturalism is both a response to the fact of cultural pluralism in modern democracies and a way of compensating cultural groups for past exclusion, discrimination, and even oppression. This assumes that diversity is beneficial to society and that autonomy should be enjoyed by disparate functional or cultural groups within a society, including religious groups, trade unions, professional organizations, and ethnic minorities. Most modern democracies, such as the United Kingdom and Ireland, comprise members with diverse cultural viewpoints, practices, and contributions. Multiculturalism seeks the inclusions of the views and contributions of diverse members of society while maintaining respect of their differences and withholding the demand for their assimilation into the dominant culture. This can describe a mixed ethnic community area where multiple cultural traditions exist. It could be a single country within which they exist, or groups associated with our original ethnic group, and foreigner ethnic groups are often the focus. Multiculturalism that promotes maintaining the distinctiveness of multiple cultures is often contrasted to other settlement policies such as social integration, cultural assimilation, and racial segregation. Multiculturalism has been described as a salad bowl and cultural mosaic in contrast to a melting pot. Proponents of government policies often claim that artificial government-guided protections are also contribute to global cultural diversity. So let's now concentrate on the multiculturalism in the United Kingdom. In the United Kingdom, multicultural policies were adopted by local administrations from the 1970s and 1980s onwards. In 1997, the new Labour government committed to a multiculturalist approach at a national level. But after 2001, there was something of a backlash. This was led by centre-left commentators such as David Goodhart and Trevor Phillips. The government then embraced a policy of community cohesion instead. The subject became the focus of renewed scrutiny in the wake of a speech by the then Prime Minister David Cameron in 2011, in which he told the Security Conference in Germany that the UK needed a stronger national identity to prevent terrorism. In this speech, which did provoke a storm, Mr. Cameron defines the doctrine of state multiculturalism as a strategy which has encouraged different cultures to live separate lives, apart from each other and apart from the mainstream. This was not a new thing. Actually, in 2004, Trevor Phillips, chairman of the then Commission for Racial Equality, which is now called the Equality and Human Rights Commission, told the Times that multiculturalism was out of date because it suggests separateness and should be replaced with policy which promote integration and assert a core of Britishness. Multiculturalism is, and still is, one of the most emotive and sensitive subjects in British politics. The UK has actually implemented a light touch form of multiculturalism, where some concessions are made to ethnic minorities. This, for instance, contrasts with the French policy of assimilation. British multiculturalism seeks to accommodate minority rights of its ethnic and racial communities based on plurality of identities, religious tolerance, and peaceful coexistence of different faith communities. This has been also characterized by strong reliance on communitarian principles translated into initiatives to achieve greater social cohesion by delegating power and empowering local communities. Multiculturalism in Ireland. In the quite recent past, and I'm sure Father John will correct me, Ireland was a monocultural, monotheistic place where pretty much everyone was white, Irish Catholic, with cultural diversity comprised of a small scattering of white Irish Protestants. James Joyce in Ulysses wrote that Ireland never persecuted the Jews because she never let them in. A person of colour was so rare in Ireland that the Irish language could not quite describe black people, other than as Far Gordon, which actually means blue man. It would not be an overstatement to say that racist attitudes were ingrained, despite there being almost no racial cultural diversity. But those days are luckily long gone. Now Ireland has the youngest population in the European Union, which now includes people from all over the world. While the numbers might not be huge, Ireland's biggest ethnic group are the Polish, followed by English, where the smallest are the Czech and South Africans. For the first time in its history, there are Irish black children, Irish Asian children, Irish Chinese children, and Irish children from various communities of differing culture, all living together with native Irish children. Now, faith is at the centre of many of the flashpoints in policy debates about multiculturalism and integration. Since the earliest post-war debates about immigration, the focus of attention has shifted successfully from race through culture and ethnicity to faith, producing, especially since 2000, a faith-based multiculturalism. What has changed is that the various faith commitments or identities of members of racial, ethnic and cultural minorities have now more often than not moved to the forefront of policy discussion. What has changed is that the various faith commitments or identities, in the past these were rendered invisible or deemed irrelevant by the secular-minded gatekeepers of public discourse. Today, under faith-based multiculturalism, the whole of policy responses, named multiculturalism, has been widened to allow more explicit attention to faith as a factor meriting attention in its own right. The reasons for the emergence of this faith-based multiculturalism are various. One is the sharp increase in inward migration from traditional religious cultures from the Indian subcontinent, the Middle East, Central Asia, Eastern Europe, Africa and Latin America. An important effect of this is that there are now notably more UK residents openly adhering to what are called Orthodox or conservative faith traditions, both Christian and otherwise. Such traditions are likely to generate values and practices counter to what is regarded as mainstream. Another reason is the rise of public religion, manifested in a challenge to public policy thrown up by a range of newly confident faith-based organisations. These are resisting what they experience as discriminatory treatment, marginalisation from important democratic forums, or exclusions from public service delivery. Collectively, their efforts have amounted to a significant challenge to the clunky, dated, but still remarkably pervasive doctrine of public secularism. This challenge attracts most media attention when it comes from Muslim organisations, but it is also being mounted by other faith groups. For example, Orthodox Jews, Hindus, and especially conservative Christian organisations have all found themselves in court in recent years, defending their corporate or individual religious freedoms against what they take to be the secularizing impact of equality laws. Finally, it probably goes without saying that the threat to public order by potentially violent, fringe extremist Islamist groups remains the source of the greatest challenge to policymakers as they seek to craft a faith-based multiculturalism. Our community, who are we? Well, first we have to start how it all began. In 1995, the Antiochian Orthodox Deanery of the United Kingdom and Ireland was created to serve over a dozen communities of Orthodox Christians who had recently converted to Orthodoxy, mostly from the Church of England. The first dean was Archpriest Michael Harper, who in December 2009 was succeeded by Father Gregory Hallam, and was then elevated to Archpriest in June 2010. Before 1995 there was just one Antiochian Orthodox community, and that was the parish of the Cathedral of St. George in London. This community served the needs of Lebanese and Syrian migrants in London, and still does this. After that date, the deanery, which now comprises 14 parishes and 4 missions, was added to it, initially belonging to a vicariate of Europe and subsequently to the Archdiocese of Europe. As the communities grew, the Church of Antioch recognized that the continent of Europe constituted an impossibly large archdiocese. The idea gained momentum that it should be subdivided. So our archdiocese was created by the Holy Synod of the Church of Antioch on the 17th of October 2013, being one of the 3 new archdioceses created out of the former Archdiocese of Europe. Then we had great joy when Sayedna Lommaert was elected as our first metropolitan. Father Silverman was ordained to the episcopate on Sunday the 30th of August 2015 at the monastery of St. George Al-Humreya in Syria, and then enthroned on the 27th of February 2016 at the cathedral. Through most communities consisted largely of converts from the Church of England, this has changed significantly by 2000 for much more diverse congregations. And this number has even more significantly increased in the last 7 to 8 years. The mission of the Archdiocese is to enable the indigenous cultures to rediscover and reaffirm their Orthodox roots, whilst at the same time integrating Orthodox Christians of many other backgrounds in a unified ecclesial whole, the hallmark of Catholicity. This, of course, does not exclude other Orthodox Christians residing in the UK, joining our church and attending our services. As an example, at St Dunstan's Orthodox Christian Church in Poole, we have a congregation consisting of over 20 different nationalities. A large proportion of these are made up of migrants and refugees. Our parish council has members who represent this mixed group of nationalities and cultures. All attend services in English, and this seems to be the unifier, but I will come back to this later. How does our community fit in a multicultural Britain and Ireland? Well, because we are part of a patriarchate which has a long multicultural tradition. Let us not forget that the followers of Jesus were first called Christians in Antioch, Acts 11:19-26. It was only natural for a city that gathered believers from both Jewish and Gentile backgrounds in one Eucharistic community to be linked to the very nature of Christianity. Referring to Antioch, the Apostle Paul stresses in Galatians 2 the importance of the universality of the gospel of Christ, its ability to address Jews and Greeks alike as indispensable, essential to the veracity and credibility of his mission. From the moment of its formation, the ancient Christian community was multicultural and multi-ethnic. Great meaning was given by the first Christians to the idea that there is a place for each nationality in the church, in which there is neither Greek nor Jew, circumcision nor uncircumcision, barbarian, Scythian, bond nor free, but Christ is all and in all. Colossians 3:11. Thus, national and social diversity has been from the very beginning an integral feature of Christ's church. This pluralistic dimension has always characterized the Orthodox Church of Antioch, and it has shaped its theological discourse. From its first years, Antioch has had a unique experience of multiplicity and diversity. It has always represented a rich human and cultural tapestry, resulting from the encounter of the civilization of the ancient Near East with Greek and Roman cultures. Later in its history, Antioch coexisted with Islam, experiencing both the tolerant openness of the early Islamic rulers and the strict control of the Ottomans. Even today, it still has a good relationship with the Muslim populations of Lebanon and Israel and Syria. English, being used as a liturgical language, aids our community in being multicultural. Except for the Cathedral of St George in London, English is used as a liturgical language in all other parishes and missions. And this has several advantages. Everybody living and working in Britain and Ireland has some knowledge, or at least should have some knowledge, of English. Many times at our parish, people which we call the cradle Orthodox have told me and Father that since coming to our church, an Antiochian church, and hearing the Divine Liturgy in English, they were finally able to comprehend the Divine Liturgy. This was not always the case in their own home countries. I am particularly thinking of people coming from countries where church services are in Slavonic or Koine Greek. There, they had to rely on family, friends, and even their priest to explain what was going on. Our community is a welcoming community. Everybody is welcome to attend our services. In many of our churches, any new visitors are met at the door and warmly welcomed. We are provided with information and asked in a very polite way whether they are Orthodox Christians or not. And this is not to separate them, but just that so they could be made aware that if they're not Orthodox, they cannot partake of Holy Communion, but they can take part in the veneration of the cross and receiving the antidote on it. Our community was not just established to serve the needs of just one particular group. Although the original remit of the Antiochian Orthodox deanery was to bring orthodoxy back to Britain and Ireland, it was not the begin-all and end-all. But Britain and Ireland used to be Orthodox, and our mission is to reintroduce Orthodoxy for a second time, giving Britain and Ireland back their Orthodox heritage. But that should not mean that we should ignore other Orthodox Christians who have come from other countries or other Orthodox churches. There are plenty of people who have either British or Irish nationalities, but who originally came from other countries. In the Antiochian Orthodox Christian Archdiocese, we do not distinguish people by their race or colour or country of origin. In the eyes of God, we are all equal. We adhere to the gospel, such as in Galatians 3, verse 28, where we can read, "There is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus." Possible issues and challenges for our community in a multicultural Britain and Ireland. First of all, we live in a multicultural but a secular society. In a proper multicultural society, every belief is accepted and has its place. But the systems of government are secular, and therefore they seem to consider all beliefs to be equal, which also means that they seem to relegate them as being of little value to the day-to-day running of a country. In a multicultural society, it is like being in an open ocean. In a multicultural society, we are exposed to every possible belief, and we need to make the right choices. We need to be conscious and sure of our identity, and we have to constantly work to cultivate and nurture that identity. We must be strong in who we are. In our multicultural society, we are invited to search for the spiritual and divine truth amongst many options that parade as truth, but which are falsehoods. So we have to ask ourselves, how can we preserve our Orthodox Christian faith in such a multicultural society? The truth is that we only preserve something if we think it is of value to us. Our faith, our belief in the one true God must be something we value. And if it is, then we naturally protect it, nurture it, and grow it. We do this by using prayer, reading, Holy Communion, acts of charity, confession, liturgical life, and fasting. Which brings me to the next item, which is the dangers of Philitism. Many of the canonical Orthodox Christian churches in Britain and Ireland were established to serve an expat population coming from countries where Orthodox Christianity was the state religion. They served a very useful purpose for many new migrants. They kept their liturgical traditions, language, customs, and also function on a social level. But now, although many of their parishes are composed of second, third, and even fourth generation descendants of those migrants, they still cling on to the diaspora. They still only want to serve people with ties back to the home country. Some consider multiculturalism to be nothing more than a right to live their beliefs and lives as they were used to. In a way, they consider segregation to be a form of multiculturalism. Many of their descendants do no longer master the language of their grandparents, so they find it difficult to attend a church where they do not understand the language. The first Orthodox church they used to attend was of the Greek Archdiocese of Thyatira and Great Britain in Welling. And many of the young people, especially the group 17, 18 to about 30, would only attend the liturgy when this is well into the latter half. Although this does not affect our community the same way, there is still room for caution. Because when I asked these people, I said, it's very strange, you always seem to come very, very late. I said, do you sleep in on a Sunday morning, been out all night? No. I said, but we hardly speak Greek as it is. We can't read Greek, and we definitely don't understand Guinea Greek. So what's the point? In some of our parishes, there will also be groups of what we call cradle Orthodox people coming from traditionally Orthodox countries. And this has seen an increase, especially the last 9-10 years, with a big migration from former Eastern Bloc countries. When a group from an Orthodox group like that, of cradle Orthodox, reaches a certain size in a parish, it is not unknown that what I would call human nature takes over. They consider the fact that they might be the largest group in a parish as an opportunity to dictate how the parish should be run. A group like that might approach a priest and ask him to insert parts of the liturgy in their own language, or add some customs they have back in their home countries. They might even propose to arrange for a priest to come over from their homelands and assist the parish priest. Does this sound far-fetched? No. And because it is happening, maybe not in our parishes, but it is happening. And it could be the death knell for our communities, because if such a thing happens, it causes alienation and friction. As I said, our Archdiocese welcomes all. Complacency, probably one of the devil's favourite toys. Even if parishes are doing very well and have a very much increased number of people attending services, activities, it is always well to not rest on our laurels. And I will come back to this a bit later. And this is not just on behalf of the clergy. We have to also beware of complacency on behalf of the parishioners. Because many times, I'm sure many of the clergy have had people approach them and say, well, Father, would it be possible to organize a pilgrimage or a trip? And if you say, well, what do you think if you got together with a couple of people and organized it? And the first thing you get is normally a great look of surprise, because they're thinking, how does the priest, how can he even think we could do this? And this is an attitude we have to change. We have to kind of give ownership to the parishioners of what they want by saying, you want it, it can happen, but take part of it. Take ownership. Relevance. Are we relevant? Of course we are. We belong to the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, and we try and live our lives according to the Gospels. But are we relevant in a multicultural society? Again, I say yes, because our community reflects the society we live in. The mission of the Archdiocese is to bring Orthodoxy back to Britain and Ireland, and this is and will not be an easy task. But we are representative of the changing face of Britain and Ireland with its changing demographics. Although the number of people identifying as being Christian has been steadily falling, the Orthodox Church in Britain and Ireland is still growing. In Britain, Orthodox Christians collectively form the third largest Christian community, having increased quite dramatically with the influx of people from Eastern Europe, the Middle East and Africa. Most of the local Orthodox churches are represented, principally the Greek Orthodox Church, but also Russian, Serbian, Romanian, Bulgarian, and of course our Antiochian Church. At first sight, Orthodoxy can seem or appear to be exotic, a purely Eastern form of Christianity. In fact, it is a universal faith with deep, deep roots in this land, which was once part of a truly ecumenical Christian fellowship, embracing both East and West. We only have to remind ourselves of the poem that Father Alexander Haig read to us last night, which his daughter Margaret wrote, to find something of what I just said in there. The Orthodox Church thus recognises herself in the faith and life of the British and Irish churches of the first millennium and venerates their saints. I will mention a couple here. There's St. Alban the First Martyr, St. Patrick of Ireland, St. David of Wales, St. Ninian of Whithorn, Cuthbert and Aidan of Lindisfarne, St. Bridget of Kildare, St. Hilda of Whitby, St. Dunstan of Canterbury, and these only a few. So, whatever anybody says, we are definitely relevant. What can our community do? Probably the first thing to do is to increase our visibility. I don't mean we should walk around in day glow jackets. It means the visibility of our church to the outside world. There are pan-Orthodox organisations and events in Britain and Ireland, but their main aim is to deal with issues pertaining only to Orthodox Christians. This means that the people, their actions they aim at, are the people that belong to those parishes. Things remain within a small, closed group. We need to be more visible in the communities we live in. We need to play a more active role in the areas we live in. We have to be more socially engaged. We have to be seen. I mean, look at some groups who are very public and visible nowadays. Muslims, LGBTQ+, whatever they call themselves now. They are in the news every day. You cannot switch on the telly or pick up a newspaper and there is an article about them. Orthodoxy will have a hard job to find something on a daily basis. As an example, as part of our fundraising for the restoration of St. Dunstan's Church, a big banner with the name of the church and an icon of St. Dunstan was displayed on the outside railing. Within a couple of days, we started getting phone calls from people telling us that they did not know there was an Orthodox church there. Some said, I have been passing this church every day for the last 5 years, but still didn't know it was an Orthodox church. So just a banner and having a reaction like this, what else can we do? A lot. But it's not just increasing the visibility of our parishes. It will have to be done on a national level. And how? Well, I will be giving you some suggestions in the next topic. We have to organise more activities involving people from outside our community. Strange as it sounds. But how can we achieve this? Well, there is the Come and See programme, but that puts the onus on the outsider coming into our churches to come and see. We need to have activities of people who are not part of our community, because otherwise how can we even begin by reintroducing Orthodoxy back to Great Britain and Ireland? Different things could be done. I'm just giving a couple: coffee mornings, barbecues, choral evenings. We could even organise a national event. As an example, last week in Belgium was the 59th celebration of the Greeks in Belgium. It's an event which is presided by Metropolitan Athenagoras of the Greek Orthodox Church in the Benelux. And they hire a park with and a manor. They have a divine liturgy, they have information stalls, dancing, food. It attracted 25,000 people. I do not have to persuade you to believe that Belgium is not the biggest country in the world. It would make us very visible, but be very attractive financially, wouldn't it? We could be able to do things with income from an event like that. What we also could do is set up a work group. A work group to have a look at what we could do to increase our visibility, to have more activities on a local and national level. I do not expect people to start jumping up and coming up to me straight after this talk, but it might be an idea, if people would be interested, maybe after summer, to get in touch. Another idea would be a media centre. And okay, I'll raise my hand, I'm guilty. I have pinched the idea from our Sayedna. Sayedna, when he was Archimandrite at the monastery in Syria, set up a media centre. And together with Diaconisa Nemike, even before Sayedna was ordained or elevated as a metropolitan, I used to get a lot of their press releases and events, and they are a professional setup. And maybe once Sayedna is well again, it might be an idea to have a chat with him, in a way pick his brains, you know, how to go about it. He has done it. So we can ask him to be our special advisor, because that would help us as well to disseminate, because nothing gets more viewers nowadays than the internet and Facebook, whether you like it or not. It is a fact. So to conclude my talk, there is no doubt about it. Our community is a multicultural community. I mean, even looking at this room, there are people from different countries here. We're all members of the Antiochian Orthodox Church, and we all believe in the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. Our mission, when the deanery and now the Archdiocese was set up in Britain and Ireland, was to bring back Orthodoxy to its people. Well, let us actually do it. No amount of talk will make something happen. We need to do something about it. We have to get organized and speak out louder, if necessary, shout. And to finish, I would like to, this verse from St. Matthew 28, verse 19. Go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. And I chose this because it has be disciples of all the nations. No, we're not going on a world trip, but I'm using the word the nations to say people from all nations living on these islands. Thank you.
Thank you.
Overlap is good, especially with key Bible verses that define Christianity. Questions and answers for Father Deacon Filip. Comments?